Well, hi everyone, wherever you happen to be. I am Michael Hingson, your host, I hope anyway, and you are listening to Unstoppable Mindset. Today we get to chat with an interesting gentleman who has lots of interesting stories and even a sad one to tell. He probably doesn't view it as being sad. It has to do with what happened to him when the pandemic started, but we'll get to that. But I'd like you to meet Michael Whitehouse. Michael, we are so glad you're here today.
I'm also glad I'm here today. So we have that in common.
Yeah, that works out really well. And I have my own pandemic story, but we'll get to that. Why don't we start for fun? Why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of the early Michael growing up and all that? It's always fun to start at the beginning.
Sure. So growing up, I guess one of the things that stands out is that I went to a non-traditional private school for 4 years called Sudbury Valley, the Sudbury Valley School. And
Hmm.
there are now dozens of Sudbury Valley style schools, but I went to the original Sudbury Valley School,
In
which was
Connecticut?
in Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts, right.
Yep.
Okay.
And in the Sudbury Valley of
Good point.
Massachusetts, thus the name. And so Sudbury Valley was a school without grades, without homework, without assigned classes. It was actually a converted mansion, had about 100 something students and half a dozen staff. And so kids were free to pursue whatever interested them. And so, the library was throughout the building, and if you had an interest in science, you'd find a staff member who had knowledge in science, and they'd put together a class or find resources, whatever it is you wanted to do, you would find it there. And my parents were always worried that I wasn't learning enough academics, but when I went back to public school, when they tested me, they said I could skip 2 grades academically. Not necessarily socially, because I didn't know the public school environment, and skipping into middle school seemed like a bad idea. But
Yeah.
academically, after 4 years of having very few formal classes, I was ready to jump from 6th grade to 8th grade. And that really kind of set the tone of me saying, I'm going to do my thing. I should follow what is right for me. In high school, I would often end up in the principal's office because the principal was in trouble and I needed to talk to him about it. I was never in trouble, but the principal often was.
I get you.
And then I went from there.
And it was probably quite amazing how much the principal learned by the time you were 21.
I, yeah, potentially. But yeah, but my whole dynamic with the way schools worked was just different from most people who had been
Right.
broken down and taught proper respect. And I wasn't doing that. I was like, you're just another human who happens to be a little bit older and getting paid to be here. So,
Yeah.
and so, I've always been an entrepreneur. My first job out of college was a game store I started myself. I did a series of sales jobs and various things. So,
Where'd you go to
uh,
college?
I went to UMass Amherst.
Okay. I haven't been to UMass, but I've been to Amherst before, so that's okay. I
Mm-hmm.
lived in Winthrop for 3 years and enjoyed all the snow.
Ah, yes.
But we had a great seafood restaurant and a great sub shop right across from where I lived. So New England was pleasurable and tolerable.
I quite like it. I've always
Yeah.
lived here.
Well, so you came out of college, you started your own game store and all that, and as you pointed out, you definitely have stuck with the entrepreneurial spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And then what'd you do?
Well, so I've always been good at doing my own thing and starting things, and not always good at making money doing it, but always good at following my own path. And actually, immediately after that, I worked for my father teaching people special needs to drive, which was definitely an interesting vocation, not my avocation, but I learned quite a bit with it. I mean, growing up with a driving instructor as a father, you learn a lot about driving, and you get pretty good at it. But I discovered, teaching special needs driving requires you to be on hair trigger alert for 2 consecutive hours, which does
Mm,
not go well with ADHD.
mm-mm.
Um, and it's one of those things where you need to be ready to respond in seconds or less, but usually don't have to. So that did not work great for me. But then, then I worked in various sales fields. I sold insurance, cars, printing, a few other things I can't remember. And ultimately in 2017 started publishing a community magazine, which basically is ad salesman. I mean, sponsorships, not ads. We don't sell ads. We sell sponsorships.
Got
Very
it.
important we call them that. But these sponsorships are where sponsors give us a certain amount of money every month, and we give them a thank you of a certain amount of square inches in the magazine every month, which is kind of like an ad. So yes, I did ad sales.
It is, but
And
why do they call it sponsorship instead of
because it,
ads?
would you rather be an ad buyer or a sponsor of a community magazine?
There you go.
Yeah. So I sold sponsorships in our magazine, and I got 80%, 85% of my business through in-person networking because
Hmm.
I got pretty good at networking. And that worked great until March of 2020 when my in-person networking well quite dried up.
Well, you were also scheduled to go on a vacation.
I was indeed, yes. So I had never been on a real vacation. I'd gone to a number of sci-fi conventions in different places,
Mm.
but through Best Version Media, I had qualified to go to their annual recognition trip down in Costa Rica. And the date the plane was to take off was March 31st, 2020. And so we're watching COVID develop and watching the date of this event getting closer and closer. And then eventually, March 14th, everything shut down. And that was the end of that trip. And yeah, so
I
alas, I
know.
never did get a vacation to Costa Rica.
I know the feeling, however. I was in New York City delivering a speech on the 5th of March, and I went home that night and I had heard about this person who attended a synagogue who apparently had gotten COVID and it was starting to spread. And when I went home on the 5th or went to my hotel on the 5th, I heard a series of news reports about the fact that COVID was spreading and they were very seriously contemplating locking down the city. And I went, oh, that's not going to do very well for me since I lived in California. I was scheduled to go home on the 6th, but it was going to be later in the afternoon. But I switched flights and got out of town at 7:15 on the morning of the 6th and made it out just before they locked down the place.
Oh wow. Yeah, so interesting coincidence. So I mentioned March 14th is when March 14th, 2020 is when Connecticut locked down. But March 14th, 2014 was when I attended my first, or maybe March 13th. 2014 was when I attended my first networking event here in Southeast Connecticut. So
Oh,
exactly 6 years to the day from from when I went to my first networking event, which was the beginning of becoming the guy who knows a guy, and arriving
yeah.
in a town not knowing anyone and making connections. Exactly 6 years to the day was when the next major transition occurred, which makes me wonder what's going to happen next March because apparently it's every 6 years.
Well, there you
So
go.
um, hopefully it won't be a global event. Hopefully it'll just be a personal.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully it won't be a tragic personal event.
Yeah, well,
It,
it
it,
wasn't.
it
Neither
wasn't
one
really
of them.
tragic. Neither. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Neither one was really
yeah,
tragic, but
both were positive events in the um, yeah, in 2014 was moving to a new town and finding a place to hit the ground running. I actually, through those connections, ended up being given a bookstore.
mm,
Um, there was a bookstore where the owners were trying to sell it, and nobody wanted to buy it because it turned out that it was massively in debt, and because they were good people but not good business people, and so they didn't even realize how much debt they had. So, but I ended up running it for a while until I realized it wasn't runnable.
mm,
But through that networking, I got all kinds of opportunities. I discovered I've got this knack for networking. A whole lot of good things come of that. And 2020, I am, I am making almost three times as much today as I was pre-pandemic publishing the magazine. And I'm doing my own thing. So, Best Version Media is a great company.
mm-hmm.
They produce great magazines, and it's a great opportunity. It was a great opportunity for me. If I'd stayed there, it would have been good. But what ended up happening, and it was better
Yeah.
because instead of following their path and their recipe, I started falling because I always seen these opportunities of, oh, maybe if I could pursue this, there might be something here. But I'm doing the magazine, that's full time. I don't have the bandwidth to do this. Oh, maybe I could do that. I don't have the bandwidth. And then once COVID basically took the magazine away as an option, it forced me to be like, well, I guess now let's try doing all those other things. And that's how I finally became a certified coach and finally and got into running virtual business events and virtual summits and podcasting more seriously. And I got to meet all kinds of people in the online business industry and just all these amazing things have happened, going on the marketers cruise, a 9-day, 8-night cruise in the Caribbean where I get to hang out with 450 entrepreneurs. Which if that's not a vacation, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
So many things that never would have happened if I hadn't been forced out of the safer lane that I was in into a less safe but more meaningful lane.
Well, you clearly have a personality for it, but would you also say that Sudbury Valley made a big difference? Was that a school that gave you a lot of skills, as it turns out, that helped you in the process?
I'm not sure if it's skills per se or simply during those formative years of age 7 to 11, I did not learn conformity.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't learn that I was supposed to be obedient and docile and all the things people learn in elementary school. Because
Yeah.
most of if you look at the academics of elementary school, you really kind of look at like, why does that take 6 years? You learn addition in first grade, you learn subtraction in second grade, you learn multiplication in third grade. The basic arithmetic is divided across multiple years. It doesn't take that long to teach basic math,
Right.
but it does teach that long to indoctrinate someone that the teacher is in charge, you are subservient, you will have someone over you, they will tell you what to do, you will do it. If you don't, you will get in trouble. Good kids listen, bad kids don't listen. Modern education is finally getting away from that, which is good because that kind of education teaches people to live in a world that no longer exists.
Right.
Becoming a good company man is a good way to be broke these days because there ain't no good companies for the good company man to work for.
Maybe a better way to put it is, do you think that Sudbury Valley helped create a mindset?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say Sudbury Valley helped to create that mindset.
That that definitely makes a lot more sense than the other. but it's cool that you did it. Why is networking so important?
So whatever it is, the reason networking is so important is that whatever it is you want to do, there's someone out there who can make it happen for you, who can help make it happen. Whether you want to learn something or you want to do something or you want to build something, there's someone out there who has the tools you need. So instead of trying to build it yourself or figure it out yourself, someone out there can help you. And most people are pretty willing to help. So if you're just doing it on your own, by yourself, you've only got what you've got. And what you've got usually isn't enough.
Right.
But if you go out to the network and the infinite resources of 8 billion people, suddenly you have access to all kinds of information, education, resources, tools, money, whatever you might need. There's someone out there who's got it. And if you're comfortable making those connections, meeting people, helping people, that's good networking is about storing up wealth before you need it. And by wealth, I don't mean money. By wealth, I mean human capital,
Right.
relationship capital. So serving others before you need them to help you, doing things for other people before you have any idea what they're ever going to do for you. Maybe they never will do anything for you, but you treat everyone as if they could do something for you, serve them, benefit them. And then one day you need something, and all of a sudden, all these people are coming out of the woodwork to help. And you're like, wow, thank you, everyone. And they're like, well, after what you did for me, of course. And that's really the key thing. The key to networking is giving. It's not just about meeting the right people. It's not about going around shoving business cards in hands. It's not about saying, hey, if you meet my ideal client, refer them to me. It's about providing value so that you have a whole lot of people who feel positive about you when the time comes.
Right. Whenever I hired a new salesperson, there are a couple things that I did with them. The first was to say, my job isn't to boss you around. You told me enough that I'm convinced that you should be able to sell our products. A few times I've found that that didn't end up being the case, but that's okay. But what I also said to them was, my job is to work with you because I have talents and gifts. You have talents and gifts. And what we need to do is to see how my talents and gifts can augment what you do in order to help you be more successful. And the other thing I told them was, you should always be a student, but especially for the first year. Don't hesitate to ask questions because your customers will be very happy to answer your questions and help educate you because they want you to be successful, whether
Mm-hmm.
they specifically say that or not.
Yep. You actually bring up a really good point that when you try to pretend you know everything, you try to act as if, and you try to be the know-it-all, people are naturally contrary. So if you try to pretend you know everything, they're going to look for what you don't know.
Yeah.
If you come in with humility and you say, I'm new to working with real estate agents. Can you tell me a little bit more about what's important to you? And they're like, oh yes, I'm an expert on being a real estate agent. I've been one for 20 years. Let me tell you all about it. And suddenly you're now on their team. They're on your team because you admitted your humanity, your weaknesses, and you gave them the chance to help you. And you let them feel smart and feel like the lead player.
But
And that's
oh, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, that's it. It gives them that sense of value.
But in reality, the other side of it is that although they're helping you, whether they necessarily, and they probably do realize it, whether they realize it totally or not, you're going to be helping them because you're in the business of selling something,
Mm-hmm.
providing something. And if you are a person with the right mindset, you're going to work to figure out, is there something that I can provide this person to help them too? And also be honest enough when you can't to say that.
Yeah. Yep. And I think by revealing your weakness, revealing what you don't know, it makes people trust more that you will say, if this isn't a fit for you, be like, oh, this person already told me what they don't know.
Yeah,
Clearly, they're going to admit if they don't, if they can't help me or if this is the wrong product.
they should.
Yeah.
I went to a sales meeting with one of my sales reps one day. He had come into the office and he said that this Wall Street firm wanted to meet. They wanted him to bring his manager. He is the person who got the best when I said, my job is to blend my talents with yours. He got it. He understood it. And so when he came in and said, these guys want to meet, they said they want my manager to be there. And he said, so I told them that that would happen. And I didn't tell him you were blind. And I knew what he meant by that. And it wasn't an insult, as you'll see. But we went off to the meeting. We arrived just a little bit late, deliberately. And as we're walking down the hall, we hear people in the room where we're going to meet going, where are these people? Why are they late and all that? We go into the room. And of course, the room falls deathly quiet because suddenly they see this blind guy with a guide dog with a briefcase with Kevin, who they knew. And we just stop and stand there a moment. And then I go to Kevin, where are we doing this? He says, oh, up here in the front. So we got to the front and I had a PowerPoint projector and took it out. Kevin plugged it in. And meanwhile, I turned to the person who was sitting as we're walking up the aisle on the upper right hand corner of the room. And I said, what's your name? And he didn't say a word. And I said, really, I want to know your name. My name's Mike. Who are you? He didn't say a word. I finally just said, look, I heard you as I went by. You're fidgety. What's your name? And finally, he told me his name. And I said, great. Thanks for telling me. Now, why are we here? I hate asking closed-ended yes/no type questions. I love, and
Mm-hmm.
it's something I learned a long time ago. You ask open-ended questions. Well, he said, we're looking for tape backup systems. I said, oh, great. Tell me more. And he told me a little more. And then I went to the next person. And by the time I went around the room and met all these people, if you will, I knew our product wasn't going to work for them. But
Mm-hmm.
we did the whole presentation. I did the PowerPoint show because I had a computer that talked and I had a script that told me everything and even had in the script descriptions not only of the pictures but where they appeared on the screen, so I could literally point over my shoulder without ever turning and looking at the screen, which wouldn't do me any good anyway. I could point over my shoulder. I practiced it and said, on the left side of your screen you're going to see something, and on the right side you're going to see something. And by the time we were done, I said, and if you haven't figured it out, our product won't do what you need, and here's why. Now here's what will work. And we ended it, and this guy comes up and he says, "We're mad at you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Oh no, it was a great presentation and all that, but," he said, "the problem is you never looked away, and we forgot you were blind, and we didn't dare fall asleep." And I said, "Well, even if you had fallen asleep, the dog's down there taking notes, we would have got you anyway." But 2 weeks later, they called and they said, "We've got another opportunity, and clearly from everything that you told us, your product's going to do what we need. We're not putting it out for bid. Just tell us the price and we'll order it today." That's trust, and that's exactly what one should get. And it was a lot of fun to do. And I learned a lot, of course, because I learned all the things that they were doing, and I learned a lot about why they needed what they needed, and that helped at other times in the future. I think the reality is, in a lot of ways, we're always students, or we should be students. We should always be working to learn, and absolutely never hesitate to ask questions.
Yeah, and that approach of going around the room and making people, making people tell you what you want. I think people are so used to predatory salespeople.
Yeah.
Who, you don't want to give them any information because it's like, if you're in court, never say anything unless someone asks you the question.
Yeah, right.
And if you're not used to collaborative salespeople, then when they're asking questions, you're like, well, why do you want to know? Well, because I want to know if we have what you want. And that's what I think when I published the magazine, the sponsorships were in 1, 2, and 3 year contracts. So if I signed up a client and they weren't a fit, I was married to them for 1, 2, or 3 years. I actually didn't have the authority to cancel the contract.
Yeah.
So if they got 3 months in and they were like, "I hate it, I want out," I had to go see them and drop off magazines every single month for the rest of their contract. So I did not want anyone signing up who did not want to do it. I did not want to trick anyone or snow anyone into doing it, because this was going to be a relationship that we were both going to have to be in. And with coaching, even more so. I don't want to bring anyone into, a coaching program if I'm going to have to see them every week and they don't want to be there, which, all my programs have an easy out that if someone doesn't want to be in, I don't want them in. I want them out more than they want out.
Yeah.
Because I only want to be working with people who are the right fit, who want to work with me.
We sold tape backup systems. I worked for a manufacturer that made most of the systems that Wall Street used to back up their data back in those days. And we actually went out to Martha Stewart Living one day, and we talked to their people for a while. And the guy that we talked with said, "I don't think your product's going to do what we need." And I said, "Why?" And I really was genuinely curious. Well, it's information that they hadn't told us before, but since I asked, he told me stuff that it was very clear that their product wasn't, or our product wasn't going to do what they needed, which was fine. And I said, "You're absolutely right." On the other hand, let me tell you something else just for your edification. Being blind, I use what's called a screen reader. It's a piece of software that verbalizes whatever comes across the screen. And marthastewartliving.com is the worst website for accessibility I've ever seen. Just so you know, because I could go to that website. It's different now, but I could go to that website and I would hear absolutely nothing on the screen. No words, no nothing. It was literally just, if you will, a blank page. So we actually ended up having a good relationship over it. I never did get to meet Martha, but by the same token, I think we left having offered him something that he really took to heart, because eventually they did make it accessible, but it took a while.
Yeah, and that's side note, but one of my pet peeves is overcomplicated technology.
Yeah,
technology that is created by people who don't fully understand what they're doing, and this has been happening for the last 40 years in computer programming.
Oh yeah,
that people know just enough to be dangerous, and then they get the job. But these overcomplicated websites that don't use any HTML, and it's all images, or it's all Flash, or it's all this, or it's all that. They're not searchable by Google. They have no SEO. The screen readers can't read them. They've just got too much stuff And I created at one point I wanted to create something that would automatically generate affiliate links.
Mm.
So you could click a button, put in your affiliate code, and it would generate an affiliate link. And so it was very simple. It was a bit of JavaScript that would go through and change all the URLs on the page and automatically make the links. And I then tried to use it on something on Go High Level. And Go High Level, I discovered, encodes everything on the page.
Oh,
Now, I don't know how this works for screen readers, but when you look at the code behind a Go High Level page, it's all code gibberish,
yeah.
which means anything that did anything to the page didn't work
Yeah.
because Go High Level's got to do it its own special way.
Yep.
You can't just use HTML and CSS like every other platform does. But it's those overcomplicated software, so they don't think about. I think everyone's living in their own little world, and so they're like, well, I don't see any reason why it bothers us to not use the standard everyone else uses. We'll just make up our own thing.
Fortunately, it's very slow in happening, but it is happening that from an access standpoint, people are starting to realize the value of accessibility. I think probably one of the biggest things that has happened is that the CDC came along and said 25% of all people in this country have a disability. Now, I disagree with that. I think 100% of all people in this country have a disability. But I mean, most of you are light dependent. You don't do well if suddenly the power goes out and it's dark outside or in your room. You start scrambling for a smartphone or a flashlight or whatever to turn the light back on because Thomas Edison has so conditioned us to have light on demand. It covers up your disability, but it's still there. You're light dependent. And if you don't have access to light, you're in a world of hurt. Doesn't bother me a bit, but it does you. But we love you anyway, by the way. But the bottom line is that CDC said 25% of all people have some sort of a disability in the traditional sense of the word. And if you don't do things to make your website accessible for those people, you're leaving 25% of your business on the table, and you shouldn't do that. And you've got all sorts of disabilities and all sorts of different kinds of things. Like there are people that, and I'm one of them, but also quadriplegics, for example, aren't going to use a mouse. People with epilepsy can't be on web pages with blinking elements. There's got to be a way to stop them from blinking and attract people's attention in other ways. And there are ways to do all of that use HTML and standard kinds of codes. It's not magical, but people still won't do it. So today we only have about 3 to 4% of all websites that are really accessible, and it shouldn't be that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think someone assessed my sites because I do everything myself and barely know what I'm doing. But someone assessed my sites, and they apparently are quite accessible because they're not loaded with junk. They're straight WordPress sites, which is basically a blogging platform. So the text is text. I think I was not. I think the one place I missed was not having all tags and all the pictures.
Yeah, you got to have all text for the pictures.
But most of the pictures aren't important. So if it's one of those like, I don't know what that picture is, but I don't care either because the text explains everything in the text.
Well, the other side of it, though, is you have the picture there for a reason. And so there should be all text. If you're going to have the picture, then you should really make sure that the information's there. And I understand that you may explain it in the text, but I wouldn't know that. So it's still good to have the alt text and so on. And that's good that you have your website accessible. And you're right. The simpler the website, the more likely it's probably more accessible right from the outset anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's simply by not using the fancy design software, didn't obfuscate the website behind the fancy design software. So I've found very often simpler is better in many applications. I've seen a lot of people tried to move into Zoom space, offering their own, like, oh, we have our own meeting platform. Like, is it Zoom? No, it's better, but it's not.
No, it's not.
And then I use it, and it's not better, surprisingly.
No. Well, Zoom, when the pandemic hit, started getting a lot of complaints about lack of access and various things. And they actually created an accessibility team that got so efficient that if somebody had a complaint about something not being accessible, you could expect within a week Zoom would fix it, which was really pretty cool. I'm not sure it's quite that way today, but still they try to keep things pretty accessible. And it is still, from my perspective, the best platform out there from a standpoint of really being able to use all the features,
Hmm.
which makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. And Zoom's been pretty smart. I mean, there's a reason why Zoom dominated the market very suddenly because they had a simple, easy to use, highly accessible platform,
Yeah.
and the other ones didn't, which is, yeah, Skype was basically the market, the dominant in 2019 and almost forgotten about by 2021.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And
that's
Microsoft discontinued it.
yeah.
Well, so you started, well, clearly you were very, very smart when the pandemic hit and you switched networking to be a more virtual type of process for you, right?
Hmm.
And so you went off and you started looking at dealing with coaching and so on. So tell me more about that and maybe some of the things that you've done with coaching and that you bring to the table, if you will.
Yeah, so when the pandemic hit, I like networking. I enjoy networking. I like meeting people. And so in second half of March 2020, I wasn't so much as I was reacting like everyone else was, didn't know how long it was going to be, didn't know what was going to happen. And I was thinking, how can I keep my business as I have it going? But I also saw a fun opportunity because I don't get to travel much. Travel costs money and takes time, neither of which I had in abundance.
Yeah.
But I could travel virtually because Zoom was new to me at that point. I'd never been
Yeah.
on a video conference till I don't know, the third week of March. And I realized, wait a minute, if my BNI group went on Zoom, every other BNI group just went on Zoom, and that would mean everyone in the world. So I found this global BNI members group on
BNI
Facebook.
stands for,
BNI's Business Network International.
that's what I thought. Okay, great.
Yep. I found this global BNI business group, and I posted. I said, "Hey, who has a group that wants me to come visit?" And this was good because the ones who actually said, yes, we want you to come visit were the ones who had a group they were proud of and wanted to show off.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see the crummy group. I didn't see the group with 7 people. I didn't see the group with bad energy. I saw the groups that were highly engaged and motivated and fun. And so I attended a group in Malaysia and I attended one or two in Australia and, Canada and Washington and Iowa and, all over. And so I started networking all around the world and I was traveling from my chair. And I'm like, this is
Mm-hmm.
pretty cool. I like this. And so, I was trying to figure out a way to continue selling the magazine, but I went online because I immediately saw the opportunity and took it. Most local business owners didn't, which
Mm-hmm.
meant my target audience wasn't going online. So they were really hard to get in touch with, really hard to find, and they were really panicked and afraid and conservative, so they weren't going to invest anything anyway, even if I could find them. And that's how I sort of stumbled into coaching. As I started meeting people, I came across a strategy to sell coaching. I actually sold coaching before I was qualified for it. Sold a bunch of clients, couldn't help them. They all canceled, which they should have because I wasn't ready to serve them. Then I got certified to coach, and then it's just a matter of going to events, meeting people, and following the breadcrumbs wherever they took me. And this is the key thing for anyone who's getting started in anything. Just start talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
Stop planning, stop building your website, stop creating your YouTube channel or writing your book or whatever. I mean, keep doing that, sure. Start talking to people. Get on calls with potential clients, get on calls with potential mentors, get on calls with anyone who's ever heard of anything about the thing you're doing. Start talking to people. You're going to learn so much more in conversations than you'll ever learn gazing at your navel or building your website or your funnel or your whatever it is you're building today. Just start talking to people.
Which gets back to what we were talking about, always being a student.
Mm-hmm.
Makes perfect sense.
Yep.
So you started doing that.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and I'm not a great student in the sense of like taking a course and reading the
Right.
books and all that.
Right.
I can if I need to, but I have learned so much more talking to hundreds of people than I ever would buying a whole bunch of courses and taking.
Yep. Yep. Because you're dealing with people who have lived it. It's not just
Mhm.
getting information, you're really getting knowledge.
Yeah. And many courses aren't actually well structured.
Right.
So it's a whole bunch of data in a difficult to absorb format being sort of dumped on you, as opposed to a conversation. You can say, wait, tell me more about that, or what's this, or what are you working on now? What's happening here? And those things someone might not include in a course, but the most important stuff you get in conversation.
Yeah. Which is a lot more fun, and you get to meet
Mm-hmm.
people. I mean, it's just so much more rewarding all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So you eventually got qualified to be a coach. How did you do that? Where did you get qualified?
Actually, I found this site that promised that they would hook me up with clients. So I just had to get certified and they'd give me clients. And of course, I, being young and foolish at the age of 41, um, no, 40, I being young and foolish, like, I don't need this certification stuff. Just give me the clients. Ironically, they never actually gave me the clients. But so they said I had to get certified and I had to pay for the certification. I went through the training. At first, I'm like, this is just a way to get my money. Turned out, no, it was actually pretty good training. And I ended up taking the follow up course that the trainer offered. That company never actually delivered on their promise to get me clients, but it did force me to get certified and learn all those foundational concepts of coaching and of identity and powerful questions and all the things that make coaching coaching.
Yeah.
Um, and from there, it was a question of figuring out what came next. And in summer of 2021, I attended one of the best virtual networking events I ever attended, and they never ran it the same way again because it was mostly breakouts, it was mostly high engagement among the attendees, and not so much talking, or not so much speakers and blah blah blah, but actual engagement. And so for me, I'm like, this is amazing. I left with 48 appointments on my calendar.
Wow.
Most other people, the feedback was it was overwhelming, it was exhausting, I didn't know what to do, I was over my head, and so they added more and more training and talking and blah 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 to it. But that was the event that up leveled me. So
Yeah.
I met all these people who had million and multi-million dollar companies, and I got on calls with them, and they gave me pointers and advice and pointed in the right direction and resources and all kinds of things. And one of them said, you know, some people pay for the right introductions. I said, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
And that's how I developed the networking concierge program, because I was already meeting people. I would find people who knew who they needed to meet. I'm already doing legwork. They pay me for the legwork I'm already doing. I make the introductions. Turns out that in the collaboration joint venture space, now this is things where shared audiences. So I promote your product to my audience, you promote my product to your audience, that kind of thing.
Right.
I assumed these people had multi-million dollar companies, knew how to make deals. I just had to, do the legwork to introduce them to the right people. Turns out they don't.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest reason is there's dozens and dozens of different forms of collaborations. And most people have one way they do it. And if they encounter someone who does a different way, they get really confused
Yeah.
and they can't figure out how to work together.
Yeah.
So I at one point had 11 clients and I was sending all these introductions. I had one client I sent 83 introductions to, and he could not build one partnership out of it.
Wow. That's
So naturally, he fired me because I was wasting his time.
yeah.
Um, but I assumed, your business did $5 million last year. I assume you know how to make a deal. Turns out it doesn't.
Yeah. Which is too bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, how did you eventually create the whole nine pillars framework? And you obviously learned what entrepreneurs did and didn't do. And I'm assuming that a lot of what you do as a coach is try to teach them to do things more the right way.
Mm-hmm. I developed the nine pillars framework because I saw so many entrepreneurs spending time, money, and energy doing the wrong things and solving the wrong problems. And doing the wrong thing like trial and error, that's fine. That's part of business. But paying to solve the problem you've already solved when you have a different problem you haven't solved doesn't make a great deal of sense.
Mm-mm.
But without a framework, there's no way for people to know what their problem is. So the nine pillars are, or the nine foundational questions that lead to the nine pillars are: what are your values? What is your major goal? How do you measure that goal? That's the first three. That's the who are you questions. The next three are the what do you do questions, which are: what problem do you solve? How do you solve it? And who do you solve it for? And the last three, which are the sales and marketing questions, are: how do you sell it? How do you nurture your audience and get them into sales conversations? And how do you generate leads?
Mm-hmm.
Or put another way, how do you turn prospects into customers? How do you turn audience members into prospects? And how do you turn strangers into audience members?
Right.
So question 9 is about lead generation. And people fixate on lead generation. And there's a running joke in the marketing world of you don't need more leads. So someone will have an email list of 5,000 people and they've only sold 3 of them. And then they'll buy a course on how to do Facebook ads.
Yeah.
Well, Facebook ads gets you more leads. You've already got 5,000 leads. How many more leads do you need?
Right.
But without a framework, there's no way to look at that and say, oh, I have leads, but I'm not getting those leads into appointments. Or I'm getting them into appointments, but I'm not selling them. Or I'm getting a good conversation where they want to buy, but I'm not clear what my product is. Or I'm not clear what problem I solve for them, or who I should be talking to, or whatever. So the way I came up with the 9 questions was I sat down one day and said, let's see if I can figure out some foundational questions. And I do not claim credit for those questions because they came too easily. I sat down and started typing, and without making any corrections or alterations, the 9 questions were in front of me in the order that I share them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come up with 12 and pare them down to 9. I didn't say, let's come up with 3 categories. I just typed out questions, looked at the screen, and said, wow, look, that's 3 sets of 3 questions. And I'm not that smart, so clearly some power greater than me channeled through me to give me those 9 questions.
There you go.
But the concept of it is you go through, you answer those questions, and some of those questions you're going to answer and be like, that's a good answer. Yep, that's definitely my answer. I'm solid about that. And other questions you got to say, okay, I know that's my answer, but it doesn't seem to be working. And other questions you're going to answer and say, and those are the ones where you should hire someone to help you. But that gives you that clarity. So, the question, and it's usually good to help, do it with someone else because you may think you have an answer. The one of them is, what problem do you solve? And that is the one that people answer wrong the most often. So, for example, I'll say, what problem do you solve? And they'll say getting on more stages and getting more exposure to the right audience. And I say, really? A lot of people say I'm getting on too many stages and reaching the right audience too much, and you want to solve that problem? And they're like, no, that's what I do for them. I'm like, so what problem do you solve? Because if the top of your website says get on more stages and reach the right audience, your target audience won't necessarily say that's me, because people think in terms of the problem they have, not the solution they need.
Right.
So, aspirin, headache medicine gets sold as, do you have a headache? Take an aspirin. It doesn't say aspirin will cure a headache, because that starts with aspirin will. I'm like, I'm not curious what aspirin does. I don't know what aspirin is. I've never heard of it. The way the human mind works, we focus on our problems because we're always thinking about ourselves.
Right.
But if we're selling something, we're always thinking about ourselves. So we're thinking, I have the best way to get you on stages. Cool. Good for you. Happy for you.
Lovely. Yeah.
Yep. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, I wish I could get on more stages. But it doesn't click that you just said the inverse of my problem. You need to actually say, if you're not getting on enough stages, or even more, if you're not getting the exposure you need because you're not getting the leads you need because you're not getting out there, because you're not getting on enough stages, I can help with that. Oh, yes. I need the leads and the exposure and the stages. So, but it gives me that framework to be able to work with clients and then figure out where is the actual challenge and the gap. And usually it's further up the questions than they think. They're like, I need more leads. I'm like, What problem do you solve? What's your
Yeah.
goal? What are your values? And if you don't know your goal and your values, you don't know what problem you solve.
Yeah. Oh, very true. I know for me as a speaker, um, I've been asked the question before. What are you going to do for us? What problem are you going to solve for us? And for my part, I will ask questions because I don't know yet what they think their problem is, but I want to find
Mhm.
out, and then I will deal with it. Well, we've got a lot of people who are very concerned about one thing or another, um, and I can eventually say things like, so you've got a lot of people who are afraid. Do they know how to control their fear? Do they know how to move beyond what they normally do? Are they worried about everything? Do they learn to control just what they have influence over and not everything else in the world? But people have to tell me what the problem is before I can
Mhm.
solve it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And if you can get into a conversation asking questions, great.
Yeah,
Because most of us solve more than one problem,
right. But
but
it
we often,
is but it's a learning experience, and I get to learn so much when I do that. Even doing this podcast,
Mhm.
as I tell people, if I'm not learning at least as much as anybody who's listening to the podcast, I'm not doing my job well.
Yeah. What's the point of being a podcast host? You're not going to learn.
Yeah, it is so much more fun to learn.
Hmm. Yeah, that was one of the things I did after that event in 2021 was I invited all the platinum VIPs, the people who had either been personally invited or had paid a lot of money to be there, invited them all to be guests of my podcast.
Hmm.
So I got to have a 1 hour conversation with all these multi-million-dollar business people, um, and actually themed for a while my podcast around talking to people who were financially successful and basically asking them what they do. My two opening questions were, "What makes you awesome? How'd you do it?" And then we took it from there.
Yeah. Are you still doing the podcast?
Well, no, because I know how to be awesome now.
Ah,
No, I,
got it. Got it.
I still do the podcast intermittently, but at that point, I really didn't know a lot about the industry.
No, I understand.
So I was able to get 60 hours of coaching from the kind of people who charge $2, 3, $4,000 an hour for
Hmm.
free, and they thanked me for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Podcasting is the greatest hack in the world.
Well, if you ever need a guest, let me know.
All right.
I'll always love to be a guest. So you say that in reality, most coaching programs are way overpriced. Tell me more about that.
Yes, so a lot of the programs out there, uh, so there's and one of the things that's the warning sign of this is that most coaches are saying step one, raise your prices. Not step one, evaluate how much value you provide or
Hmm.
evaluate what your audience needs. First, raise your prices because you're worth more. You deserve to be rich. Well, that's the industry ethos that everyone's being taught. That alone is going to make most coaching programs way overpriced.
Yeah.
But so there's a couple things that are in a program. First off, there's the information. And the kind of stuff we do is not rocket science. So, there's programs out there that teach you how to, um, say, build a summit, and they're going to charge you $5,000. Well, I can teach you how to build a summit in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Not rocket science. But they spread it out over 19 modules, and there's a homework and a this and a that and the whatever. A lot of which is busy work. A lot of which is stretching it out to feel valuable and not actually making it effective. The other thing is the delivery method of many of these programs is terrible. It's more like corporate training. Is not even as good as university training, which tends to be pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Learning is fun, classes are boring. So, a lot of times the epistemology is just not very good. A lot of these higher ticket programs, you're not actually learning from the person you're buying the thing from. You're learning from their staff and their team. And so oftentimes you can get better support by paying less because what people really need very often is accountability, encouragement, maybe a question here or two answered. But it's for the most part, it's not a matter of upskilling because for a lot of people in the online business space, you don't need to learn how to build a funnel. For that amount of money, you should just hire someone to build you a funnel.
Yeah.
because you're not going to learn as much as they know. So you might as well just hire someone to do it right the first time. And oftentimes these programs are built around what can we sell, and then, oh, I guess we need to deliver something on the back end. So marketing has driven the online coaching course program space. Now, there are some programs that are worth it. There are some programs that are highly valuable, that are worth every penny, but too many of them are priced based on I'm worth it, or based on those who pay attention. So the higher the prices, the higher the quality people. And oftentimes the reason they get good results is that because they're $10,000, the only people who buy them can afford $10,000 programs, which means their company is already making $200,000.
Right.
So if the program can increase their revenue by 20%, that's a $40,000 increase. That's a 4x increase, a return on the investment. You win. But all it really did was a bit of accountability and a bit of information, and wasn't necessarily what they needed.
Right. I hear you. And it happens all too often. I think that it is true that a lot of people undervalue what they offer, but you have
Mm-hmm.
to know what you offer before you can really decide what the value ought to be.
Yeah, I've also noticed an inverse relationship between marketing quality and program quality.
Yes.
So, and part is because there's no pressure. Like if you're not a good marketer, your program is going to be really good, because if you get a client, you're going to take really good care of them.
Yeah.
Whereas if you've got a great paid ads funnel and you could just put a bit more money in and get more leads in, and the leads go to the webinar and the webinar goes to the landing page and you get the sales, you could have a steaming pile of garbage at the other end. The people reading these Facebook ads are never going to talk to each other. There's no Yelp for coaching programs and courses.
Right.
So you're just going to sell a bunch of crap and maybe pay a few refunds. Yeah, I'm in some of these groups. I think I've left most of the worst ones. But I remember conversations with people like, yeah, so what do you do about refunds? My refund rate's about 40%. And I don't like PayPal because it pays refunds too easily. And so I lose 40% of revenue. And I'm like, here's an idea. Maybe don't sell trash. Maybe
Yeah.
don't be a con man. Don't be a charlatan. That's my strategy for not paying refunds. I've paid $120 of refunds in 5 years. Not 120,000, $120.
There you go. And that was to the person who invented COVID, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The refunds I sent one person, they got a two pay, so they split the price into two parts, and they forgot what it was, so they charged back the second payment. And I tried to contact them, be like, "Hey, you bought this course," and they didn't respond, and they finally got back to me 8 months later. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
And there was one guy that early on, before I knew how my technology worked, signed up for a subscription, and then the program stopped running, but the subscription kept running.
Ooh,
And so I gave him his money back. But
tech.
but again, I think he called his credit card company before he called me, and so it ended up being a chargeback and not a refund. But like that's I've never I have never had anyone who understood what they bought and remembered it. And that person, the first person who charged back the second payment, once she realized it, she's like, "Oh no, that program was good. Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Yeah, well,
Yeah. When people understand it, they're not going to want a refund because they
yeah,
see the value.
yep." And that's why I like to do everything as hands on as possible. I'm not interested in creating a 18-part recorded course and then charging $2,000 for it. I want to do things that have people in a Zoom room with me so I
Yeah.
can work with them individually.
Yeah. As a speaker, although I am very capable of doing virtual talks, having now done this for 23 and a half years, I kind of know typically how audiences react, but I still prefer to do in-person events because I can hear the audience reacting to things that I say and I know how well I'm connecting, and I don't get that same dimension with Zoom, but I've done it so much that I ask enough questions ahead of time that I know about the audience that I can pretty much predict how they're going to react, even if I'm doing a Zoom presentation. But still, you've got to really understand the audience, and you got to know what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking, I mean, when I present on Zoom, I'm looking at the little boxes and seeing, the faces on there. So not having that tool would make that virtual presentation definitely quite challenging. So if you could engage an audience that way, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves is going to a virtual summit or something where everyone's cameras off.
Yeah.
And the first thing I always say is, and actually what I started doing is making a little joke out of the slide. And I'll be like, you guys have a choice. So I have two talks I can give you. I can give you the fun, high energy, high vibration, engaging, funny talk, or I can give you the boring, dull, monotonous, monotone talk. And next to it will be the icon for camera on and camera off.
Yeah.
So you can vote for which talk you want by selecting your camera setting. If you want the boring talk, leave your camera off.
Yeah.
If you want the good talk, turn your camera on. I went to a summit the other day where there were like 18 people in the room and 3 cameras came on. And generally that means there's 3 people in the room and the other 12 have left.
Yeah.
They went off to do something else, and I'm talking to 3 people.
I've often turned my camera off mainly because I assume that the speaker is what you want to focus on. But that's my probable misconception of whether I should have the camera on or not. But
and the host should be spotlighting the speaker. So
Yeah.
whether your camera's on or not shouldn't make a difference.
shouldn't really make a difference. Yeah.
Someone goes to gallery mode, but the speaker is usually in gallery mode looking at all the faces
Right.
if they're there. But that's a mistake most speakers make, is not asking people to turn their cameras on. Because most people, if the speaker starts, says, hey, I want to see who I'm talking to, I'm going to be asking you to raise your hands, give them a thumbs up, whatnot. I'm going to need your camera on. Most people are like, oh, okay, yeah, there's a reason to be here. But yeah, there's also a matter of, do I want a camera showing me to dozens of people when I'm not thinking about it?
Right.
Am I picking my nose and not thinking about it? Am I, scratching my butt on camera? And so I turn my camera off just so I don't have to worry about like, oh, did they see that? Oh, shoot. So, but again, that's up to the speakers to engage that audience to bring them in there.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. So why is it that networking seems to be so difficult for most people?
They don't know how to do it, and they don't know what it is.
Good point.
So networking is so difficult for most people because they don't know what networking is for. They're told you should network. You need to know people. They're not told why. They're not told what they'll get out of it, or how to find their goals. And then they're not told how to do it. So what they need to be doing is first off, know what they want. And that comes from assuming anything was possible. What do you want? Don't worry about how, just worry about what you want. And then it's a matter of who do you need to meet to get that. But even before you have that, if you go networking, you got no goals, you got no idea, you got no strategy. Networking is not a place to pitch. And some people are taught you need a good elevator pitch. You need need to explain yourself in 8 seconds. No, you don't. You don't need to say anything. You need to understand them.
Yeah.
And so many people, they go into networking, they're like, oh, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to introduce myself. Well, do you know your name? Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Say hello. Smile.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Michael. If your name is not Michael, I recommend you use your name and not my name. But for everyone who's on this call, this will work. Hello, my name is Michael.
Hello, my name is Michael. Yeah, see, there you go.
And then what I've always taught people is your goal is to solve a problem for them. And the 3 arrows in your quiver of problem solving is introductions, advice, and offers. So introductions is a person.
Right.
Oh, you have this problem? Oh, if you met Bob over there, I think he can help you. Advice is anything from advice, here's an idea, to YouTube channel, book, podcast, whatever. And then offer, and this is the most rare, least common, sometimes the thing you sell actually solves the problem they state they have.
Right.
But only if they state the problem that your thing solves.
Right.
And not just you have the problem that you need their money, so you're really hoping that they need it. You don't even need to bring up what you sell until they say they have the problem. And if you focus on solving their problem, you're going to go into detective mode. You're going to say, I need to figure out a problem this person has. Ah, found a problem. Now I need to figure out a solution for the problem this person has. And you are now the most attentive, most interesting, most helpful person they have met at this event, or probably the last 5 events combined. Because
Yeah.
every other person was trying to give their sales pitch or their elevator pitch or talk about the thing they're doing or invite you to the event or whatever. And you're the only one who, in the conversation, was fixated on what they need and how to help them.
I love asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way to do it.
It is the magic.
Well, we've been doing this for an hour. We've had a lot of fun. I'm going to go ahead and stop because I don't want people to get too bored. And if they really like this, then they should tell me so we can do another one. What do you think?
That sounds good to me.
There you go. But it's always good to have two Michaels on a call, right?
It definitely is.
Yeah. But I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank all of you for listening and watching wherever you happen to be. Just so you know, at the beginning, Michael asked me if this was going to be videoed, and I said yes. So he said he had to make himself look beautiful. So I'm assuming he did, because I really can't tell any difference. But I'm sure he did. People want to reach out to you. How do they do that?
So you can find links to all of my social medias and such at guywhoknowsaguy.com. There's no A on the website. It's just guywhoknowsaguy.com. And from there, they can find links to the Facebooks and the LinkedIns and the TikToks and all those kinds of places. And also links to find all my books.
Yes.
There's a link to there as well.
And we put a bunch of them up in the show notes. And so I hope people will reach out, and I hope that we are able to help generate some good constructive business for you, which is always a good thing.
I hope so. I like that. That's a good plan.
Yeah, I like that. Well, thanks for being here, but thank you all for being here as well. I'd love to hear your comments. Please feel free to email me at michaelhi@accessibe.com, or go to michaelhingson.com/podcast. Hingson is spelled Hingson. Michael's pretty common, but it is Michael. So michaelhingson.com/podcast. And if you know any guests or someone who you think ought to be a guest on our podcast, I'd love it if you'd introduce us. Michael, same for you. We are always looking for people to chat with. So definitely anyone you might know who you think ought to come on Unstoppable Mindset, we're always looking and would appreciate your help. But meanwhile, I want to thank you again for doing this. This has been fun. So thanks very much, Michael.
Thank you.